Ayrton Senna was not just a racing driver. He was a force of nature, a spiritual warrior wrapped in a fireproof suit, a man who made millions believe that one human being could truly touch the face of God at 200 miles per hour. Born on March 21, 1960, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, into a wealthy family, young Ayrton was not the prodigy you might expect. As a child, he was shockingly clumsy. He struggled with motor coordination, tripped on stairs, dropped things constantly, and moved slower than other kids his age. Doctors flagged his development with real concern. Nobody looking at that awkward little boy could have predicted what was coming. Everything changed at age when his father, Milton, a sharp and loving businessman, hand-built him a tiny go-kart powered by a 1-horsepower lawnmower engine. The moment Ayrton gripped that steering wheel, something switched on inside him. The clumsiness disappeared. The fear dissolved. He did not drive the cart. He became one with it. The engine was his second heartbeat, and the smell of burning fuel was the greatest perfume on earth. He had found his language, and that language was speed. But raw talent alone does not build a legend. Discipline and pain do. As a teenager, Ayrton entered his first karting race in the rain and got destroyed. He spun out, lost control, and finished in humiliation. Any ordinary kid would have blamed the weather. Ayrton blamed himself, and then he went to work. Every time storm clouds rolled over Sao Paulo, while everyone else ran for cover, one lone cart was out on empty Interlagos track, sliding, spinning, and getting back up. He taught himself to feel the grip through the faintest vibration of the chassis. He learned to treat the throttle gently instead of hammering it. Those cold, wet afternoons turned his greatest weakness into his deadliest weapon. He did not just learn to drive in the rain. He mastered it, and the world would eventually bow to that mastery. By 1984, Ayrton Senna arrived in Formula One and immediately announced himself to the world. At Monaco, driving an underpowered Tolman through blinding rain, he was cutting down a gap to race leader Alain Prost by 3 seconds per lap, an absolutely insane pace. Just as he was about to make the decisive pass, race officials waved a red flag and ended the race for safety. Senna was denied his first win by pure politics, but the message was crystal clear. A new king had arrived. His rivalry with Alain Prost became the defining conflict of the entire sport. Prost was cold, calculated, methodical, the professor. Senna was raw instinct, emotion, and spiritual fire. As McLaren teammates in 1988, they pushed each other to the absolute edge. In a famous qualifying session at Monaco, Senna described entering a trance state, driving beyond what the car was physically capable of, feeling as though God was guiding his hands through every corner. He outqualified Prost by nearly 1.5 seconds. Then, while leading by a massive margin, he lost concentration and crashed into the barrier. He locked himself in his apartment that night and wept. Even touching the divine does not make you immune to human error. The rivalry turned vicious at Suzuka in 1989 when they collided and Prost was handed the championship by a controversial disqualification. 1 year later, also at Suzuka, Senna took deliberate revenge, driving straight into Prost at over 160 miles per hour at the first corner. Both cars flew into the gravel. Senna became world champion in the most controversial moment in Formula One history. He defended the move with the now legendary line, "If you no longer go for a gap that exists, you are no longer a racing driver." 3 world championships, dozens of iconic victories. But the moment that turned Senna into a living saint in Brazil came at Interlagos in 1991, when his gearbox locked in 6th gear with 7 laps to go. No downshifting, no mechanical help. Just Senna, brute strength, and a will that refused to break. He crossed the finish line in first place, screaming in agony over the radio, muscles completely destroyed. He could not even lift the trophy on the podium. That was not a racing driver. That was a martyr, away from the track. Senna was a deeply sensitive, lonely man searching desperately for love and peace. He married his childhood sweetheart at 21 and quit racing entirely, trying to live a normal life. It lasted a matter of months. He could not stay away from the car. The divorce left a scar he never fully healed. Later romances, including a high-profile relationship with Brazilian television star Suxa, played out publicly and ended quietly. But his final love, a 19-year-old model named Adrienne Galistu, gave him something he had never had before: simplicity. She taught him to eat street food, wear torn jeans, laugh without restraint, and run barefoot on the beach. He was planning to marry her. His family disapproved, and the tension tore him apart in his final months. Senna's wealth was enormous. He earned $1 million per race, owned a fleet of private aircraft, including Learjets and Acuri helicopters, and maintained a stunning coastal estate at Angra dos Reis in Brazil. But he spent money in ways nobody expected. He quietly funded hospitals, schools, and child nutrition programs across Brazil throughout his entire career, without saying a single word to the press. Only after his death did the world discover he had donated the equivalent of approximately $400 million in today's value to humanitarian causes. He was one of the most secretly generous people on the planet. On May 1st, 1994, at the San Marino Grand Prix in Imola, Italy, the weekend was already cursed. His close friend Rubens Barrichello had nearly died in a crash on Friday. Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger was killed on Saturday. Senna sat in the garage on race morning, visibly shaken, holding a Bible. He called Adrienne and told her he had a terrible feeling. He did not want to race, but he got in the car anyway. On lap 7, at the high-speed Tamburello corner, a suspected steering column failure sent his Williams straight into the concrete wall at 190 miles per hour. He never regained consciousness. Hours later, doctors at Maggiore Hospital in Bologna announced that Ayrton Senna da Silva had died. 3 million people lined the streets of Sao Paulo for his funeral, the largest in recorded history for a single individual. Brazil declared 3 days of national mourning. His sister Vivian fulfilled his final wish by founding the Instituto Ayrton Senna, which has since helped over 36 million Brazilian children access quality education. Every child who learns to read through that foundation is another victory for Ayrton, quieter than a world championship, but far more permanent. Senna's life teaches a truth that outlasts any trophy. Time is short, love is real, and if something sets your soul on fire, you chase it with everything you have, like it is your final lap.